Alongside Dave Naylor and Jim Barker, and the Ottawa Redblacks and Montreal Alouettes squaring off on Friday night in preseason action. But two guys we did not see in this game were their starting quarterbacks, Jeremiah Masoli and Cody Fajardo. We'll get to Fajardo in just a moment. But first, let's go to Masoli and just a horrific injury a season ago, only played 4 games. He's not going to see any preseason action. Do you think that's odd, Coach?
It's odd in that he didn't play at all last year, except when you realize the scope of the injury he had, it was different. It wasn't an ACL, it wasn't a shoulder. His bone was actually, it's hard to watch, tweaked and broken, and then they had to put things in it to straighten it out, and then he had an infection that threw him back 2 to 3 months. I don't know that you can say, okay, well, in 4 weeks he's going to be ready, in 5 weeks he's going to be ready. So he's just started practicing live, and hopefully he's going to be back ready for the season, because when he's there, they can win the Grey Cup. And there's no doubt about it. But they've got to also be very prudent in if he starts a season, the first 2 games, or let him play the 2 games, take the long 15-day break prior to game 3, and that gives him an extra 30 days if that's what he needs. You
know, this is a really important stretch for Jeremiah Masoli in his career, and I can kind of go both ways on this. Like, when they went out and got him, I thought that was a great sign. He'd been, a guy who'd been mostly healthy in his career. He had the ACL injury in 2019, but he was still, a relatively healthy player who had no trouble staying on the field. Now I look at it, I look ahead, I see he's 35 in August, and this is a guy who's played 22 games of football in the last 4 years. Now, one of those was a season that didn't happen, but that's not a lot of football. And if he comes back and has another serious injury at age 35, I mean, his career may not be in jeopardy, but his time as the Ottawa Redblacks starting quarterback, the guy that they can count on and the guy that they wanted to ride for a number of seasons, that's really what I think is at stake here.
And fans just hoping that he can get back to his old form, and that's the same with Cody Fajardo back in 2019. He was absolutely fantastic. 28 total touchdowns, threw for over 4,000 yards that year. He had 24 touchdowns, over 3,000 yards in his final season with the Rough Riders. Jim, do you like the fit with the Alouettes?
I really do, just because I think he's going to have an offensive line that's much more experienced here. He's got William Stanback behind him and Walter Fletcher. They're going to be able to mix things up. He's not going to be standing back, and taking shots and that kind of thing. He can do what he does, which is stretch a defense with his legs and use those big backs. So I think this is a great fit for him.
Well, and a lot of people would look at Jason Maas as the head coach there and say, well, wait a minute, wasn't he the OC in Saskatchewan last year when they sat him down at the end of the year on a game that they needed to win to get to the playoffs? Yes, he was, but that was not Jason Maas's call. And I think the fact that Jason Maas still stood behind him in those circumstances and wanted to go with Cody Fajardo, I mean, there's still that trust between them. They say sacks, some people say, is not a quarterback or is not an offensive line stat. It's a quarterback stat. Although when I saw Cody Fajardo last year, it was like he could never get his feet set before he was already running for his life. So going from the worst offensive line in the CFL in 2022 to what could be the best offensive line in the CFL in 2023, that will help.
And we do think we will see him in that game, Hamilton and Montreal. I don't know about the two of you two. I'm still getting used to all these quarterbacks playing for different teams at this point as we send it back to SportsCenter.